I thought my son was saving me from loneliness when he moved back home. Turns out he was saving me for something much worse. When I found that hidden camera in my bedroom and saw what he'd been recording, I realized my own flesh and blood had been hunting me like prey. But two can play that game, and this old woman still had some fight left in her. Before I tell you how I turned the tables on my predator son, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button like your life depends on it, because these stories, they're the kind that disappear if we don't stick together. And smash that like button so hard it breaks, because what I'm about to tell you will shake you to your core. Trust me, you'll want to remember exactly where you heard this first. Now let me tell you what really happened when I discovered my son wasn't the savior I thought he was. My name is Eleanor, and I raised my boy David to be good, worked double shifts at the diner for 12 years just to keep him in decent clothes and books. When his daddy walked out, I became his everything: mother, father, cheerleader, disciplinarian. I thought I'd done right by him. Thought I'd raised a man who'd protect his mama when she got old and fragile. How wrong I was. It started innocent enough. David called me last spring, voice all concerned and loving. "Mama," he said, "I've been thinking about you in that big house all alone. What if something happens? What if you fall and nobody knows? I'm moving back home to take care of you." My heart swelled with pride. Here was my baby boy, all grown up at 32, still thinking about his old mama. I should have known something was off when he insisted on the bedroom next to mine instead of his old room upstairs. Said he wanted to be close in case I needed help in the night. Should have questioned why he brought so many boxes for someone who claimed he was just staying temporarily. Should have wondered why he kept asking about my daily routine, my doctor appointments, when I took my medications. But I was just grateful. Grateful to have my son's voice filling the house again. Grateful for someone to cook for, someone to fuss over. I made his favorite meals every night. Pot roast on Sundays, fried chicken on Wednesdays, always fresh cornbread cooling on the counter when he got home from his job at the warehouse. The first strange thing happened 3 weeks after he moved in. I woke up groggy one morning, more tired than usual even though I'd slept 10 hours. My coffee cup was already washed and put away, which was odd because I always left it in the sink for morning cleanup. David was whistling in the kitchen, making scrambled eggs like nothing had happened. "Sleep okay, Mama?" he asked, not quite meeting my eyes. "Like a baby," I lied, because something in his tone made me uncomfortable. The grogginess happened again 2 days later, then again the following week, always on nights when David stayed up late claiming he was watching movies in his room, always followed by mornings where small things were different. A drawer not quite closed the way I'd left it, my purse moved slightly on the hallway table, my bedroom door cracked open when I always slept with it shut tight. I started paying attention, started marking where I placed things, started pretending to sleep while listening for sounds in the hallway. That's when I heard it, the soft creak of my bedroom door opening at 2 in the morning, the whisper of footsteps on my carpet, the barely audible click of something electronic. My blood ran cold, but I kept my breathing steady, kept my eyes closed, felt him standing over my bed for what seemed like hours before he finally crept back out. The next morning, I searched my room while he was at work, looked behind picture frames, under furniture, inside lampshades. Found nothing, but I knew something was wrong. A mother knows. I called my doctor and asked about the grogginess. He said it sounded like I might be taking too much of my sleep medication, but I hadn't increased the dose. Had anyone else had access to my pills? The question hit me like a sledgehammer. I started checking my pill bottle every night before bed, counting exactly how many were left. Sure enough, on the nights I woke up extra groggy, there were fewer pills than there should have been. Someone was drugging me, someone who had access to my medication, my food,
my house. Someone who slept 20 feet away and called me Mama. I wanted to confront him, wanted to grab my son by the shoulders and demand to know what he was doing to me. But something told me to wait, to gather evidence first, to be smart about this, because I was starting to realize I might be in real danger. The next time I felt that unnatural drowsiness coming over me, I forced myself to stay partially awake, fought through the fog in my brain, and positioned myself so I could see my bedroom door through barely opened eyes. At 1:47 a.m., it opened silently. David crept in carrying something small and rectangular. In the dim light from the hallway, I could see him moving around my room, positioning the object at different angles, taking pictures. No, not pictures. The red light was steady, not flashing. He was filming me. My own son was drugging me unconscious and recording me while I slept. The realization hit me like ice water. This wasn't about taking care of his aging mother. This was something sick and twisted and unthinkable. But I lay there, motionless, barely breathing, until he finished his business and crept back out.
I didn't sleep the rest of that night, just stared at the ceiling wondering who my son really was and what he planned to do with those recordings. The next day, while David was at work, I tore my room apart looking for hidden cameras. Found one tucked inside the decorative molding above my dresser, another one hidden in the base of my bedside lamp. Tiny things, barely visible unless you knew where to look. How long had he been watching me? How many recordings did he have? What was he planning to do with them? I felt sick, violated, betrayed in a way that cut deeper than anything I'd ever experienced. This wasn't a stranger breaking into my home. This was my child, the baby I'd nursed through pneumonia, the boy I'd cheered for at every baseball game, the young man I'd been so proud to see graduate high school despite all our struggles. That evening, I acted normal, made his favorite dinner, asked about his day, pretended nothing had changed. But inside, I was planning. Because if my son thought he could prey on his own mother, he was about to learn that this old woman wasn't as helpless as she looked. I started by researching what he might be doing with the recordings. What I found made me physically ill. There were websites, forums, markets for this kind of content. People paid good money for videos of unsuspecting women, especially older women who couldn't fight back. My son wasn't just violating me, he was profiting from it. I documented everything. Used my old digital camera to photograph the hidden cameras before I moved them. Started keeping a journal of dates, times, and incidents. Called my friend Dorothy, who used to work for the police department, and asked hypothetical questions about hidden cameras and invasion of privacy. The hardest part was continuing to act normal around David, sitting across from him at dinner, knowing what he'd been doing to me. Listening to him talk about his day while wondering if he'd spent his lunch break uploading videos of his unconscious mother to some perverted website. But I needed more evidence before I made my move. Needed proof of what he was doing with the recordings. I started pretending to take my medication, but actually hiding the pills under my tongue and spitting them out later. Then I'd lie in bed and wait for him to come in with his camera. I wanted to catch him in the act, get him on record, prove what he'd been doing. The first night I tried this, he seemed suspicious, stood in my doorway for a long time before approaching the bed, whispered my name softly to see if I'd respond. When I didn't move, he proceeded with his usual routine, but he was more careful, more paranoid. I realized he'd been getting comfortable, sloppy. Now I was making him nervous. Good. The second night, I was ready. I'd positioned my own recording device, a small digital recorder Dorothy had given me, hidden in the folds of my nightgown. When David crept in at his usual time, I captured everything.
His whispered comments about camera angles, his crude observations about my body, his casual discussion of uploading schedules and profit margins, talking to himself like this was just another day at the office. My son wasn't just a predator, he was a businessman. When I heard him say he was planning to expand his operation, maybe invite some friends over to help with production, I knew I had to act fast. The next morning, I called Dorothy and told her everything. She came over that afternoon while David was at work, bringing her nephew Jerry, who worked in computer forensics. Together, we documented every hidden camera, every piece of evidence, every detail of what had been happening in my home. Jerry found David's computer password and accessed his files while Dorothy and I watched in horror. Dozens of recordings of me sleeping, changing clothes, showering, all uploaded to multiple websites with titles that made me want to vomit. Comments from buyers discussing my body like I was livestock. But we also found something else. Messages between David and other men discussing plans for escalating the situation. Talk about bringing cameras into the bathroom, about inviting others over to participate, about what they called Phase 2 of the operation. They were planning to do more than just record me. Dorothy immediately called her contacts in the police department, while Jerry copied everything onto external drives. By evening, we had enough evidence to put David away for a very long time. But I wasn't satisfied with just sending him to prison. That felt too easy, too clean. This man had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. He turned his own mother into merchandise, and I wanted him to understand exactly what that felt like. So, I made some calls of my own. I contacted David's employer and told them about the situation, sent them copies of some of his messages where he'd bragged about using company computers to manage his illegal business. He was fired within hours. I called his ex-girlfriend Sarah, the one he'd been trying to win back for months, sent her evidence of what kind of man he really was. She posted it all over social media before blocking him on every platform. I reached out to his friends, his cousins, his coworkers, made sure everyone in his life knew exactly what David was doing to his own mother. Let them see the real person behind his charming smile and respectful facade. But I saved the best for last. I made copies of all his recordings and messages and edited them into a comprehensive presentation and scheduled it to be automatically sent to every contact in his phone and email at exactly 6 p.m. on Friday. His friends, his family, his former coworkers, his dating app matches, everyone. Then I changed all the locks on the house. David came home that Friday evening to find his belongings packed into boxes on the front porch and police officers waiting to arrest him. The look of confusion on his face quickly turned to horror as his phone started buzzing with notifications. Call after call from people who just received a detailed breakdown of his crimes against his own mother. Officer Martinez read him his rights while his phone continued ringing. Friends calling to tell him he was sick, family members calling to disown him, former coworkers calling to tell him they'd always known something was wrong with him. As they loaded him into the police car, he looked at me, standing in my doorway. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I saw real emotion in his eyes. Not the calculated manipulation he'd been using on me for months, but genuine fear and devastation. "Mama," he called out. "Mama, please, I can explain. This isn't what it looks like." I stepped closer to the car so he could hear me clearly. "Son," I said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "this is exactly what it looks like. You turned your own mother into a product. You drugged me unconscious so you could violate my privacy and profit from my vulnerability. And now everyone you've ever known is going to understand exactly who you really are." The officers drove away with him still calling my name. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in months. No cameras watching me, no drugs making me groggy, no footsteps creeping through my bedroom. just silence and safety, and the satisfaction of knowing that my predatory son was finally facing consequences for what he'd done. The trial lasted 6 months. David pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including invasion of privacy, distribution of illegal recordings, drugging without consent, and elder abuse. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in prison, calling his crimes particularly heinous because they targeted his own vulnerable mother. During his sentencing, David tried to give a speech about how sorry he was, how he'd lost his way, how he just needed help. I sat in the front row and listened to every word without showing any emotion. When the judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement, I stood up and looked directly at my son. "Your Honor," I said, "I raised this man from birth. I sacrificed everything to give him a good life. I trusted him with my safety, my home, and my dignity. He repaid that trust by turning me into a commodity to be sold to the highest bidder. He drugged me unconscious so he could violate my privacy and profit from my vulnerability. This isn't a case of someone losing their way. This is a case of someone revealing who they always were underneath the mask." I paused and looked directly at David, who was crying in his orange jumpsuit. "I don't forgive you," I said, "and I don't want you to contact me ever again. You're no longer my son. You're just a stranger who used to live in my house." The courtroom was silent as I sat back down. After the sentencing, reporters wanted to interview me about how I'd caught my son and turned the tables on him. I gave a few carefully planned statements about trusting your instincts and fighting back against people who try to victimize you, even if they're family. But mostly, I just wanted to go home and reclaim my space. I had the entire house professionally cleaned and blessed by my pastor, bought new furniture for my bedroom, and installed a security system that I controlled completely. Started volunteering at a center for elder abuse victims, helping other people recognize the warning signs I'd missed for so long.
Dorothy and I became closer than ever. She helped me heal from the betrayal and reminded me that family isn't just about blood. Sometimes the people who truly care about you are the ones who choose to be in your life, not the ones who happen to be born into it. I also started dating again, if you can believe that. Met a gentleman named Robert at the community center who makes me laugh and treats me with genuine respect. It's nice to remember what healthy relationships feel like after spending months being manipulated by someone I trusted completely. David tried to write me letters from prison, but I sent them all back unopened. He had his chance to be my son, and he chose to be my predator instead. That door is closed forever. I learned something important through this whole nightmare. Being family doesn't give someone the right to hurt you. Being blood doesn't excuse betrayal. And being older or vulnerable doesn't mean you have to accept abuse from people who should be protecting you. I also learned that revenge, when it's justified and proportionate, can be incredibly healing. I didn't just want David punished by the legal system. I wanted him to experience the same kind of violation and helplessness he'd inflicted on me. I wanted his reputation destroyed the way he'd tried to destroy my dignity. And I got exactly what I wanted. The last I heard, David was having a difficult time in prison. Apparently, other inmates don't take kindly to men who prey on their own mothers. He's been moved to protective custody twice for his own safety. I can't say that news bothers me. Sometimes people ask if I ever regret how hard I came down on him, if I ever wonder if I should have just gotten him therapy instead of destroying his entire life. The answer is no. David made his choices. He chose to see his mother as a victim instead of a person deserving respect. He chose to drug me and violate my privacy for profit. He chose to plan even worse violations for the future. Those weren't mistakes or cries for help. They were calculated decisions made by someone who saw his own mother as nothing more than an opportunity. I simply made sure he faced appropriate consequences for those decisions.
Now I live peacefully in my clean, safe house with my security system, in my new relationships, and my volunteer work helping other people who've been betrayed by family members. I sleep soundly every night, knowing that I fought back against someone who tried to destroy me. And I sleep knowing that David is locked away where he can't hurt any other mothers or daughters or vulnerable women. That's not revenge. That's justice. And sometimes, when someone hurts you badly enough, justice is the most loving thing you can give yourself. I want you to remember something if you ever find yourself in a situation like mine. You don't owe anyone your safety just because you share DNA with them. You don't have to accept abuse just because it comes from family. And you absolutely have the right to fight back against people who try to victimize you, even if they call you mama while they're doing it. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Find people who will believe you and help you. And never ever let someone convince you that you're overreacting when your gut tells you something is wrong. Because sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones planning to hurt you the worst. But you're stronger than they think you are, and you deserve so much better than being someone's victim. Now, tell me in the comments what you would have done in my situation. Would you have called the police immediately, or would you have wanted revenge first, like I did? And share any stories you have about family members who turned out to be different than you thought. I read every comment, and I want to hear from you.